Welcome to Alternative Dog Moms Podcast. I'm Kimberly Gauthier, the creator of Keep the Tail Wagging. For the past 9 years, I've been blogging about raw feeding, pet wellness, and life as a crazy dog mom. I've seen massive improvements in my dog's health since I started raising my dogs naturally, and I'm passionate about sharing my experience to help other pet parents.
I'm Erin Scott. For the past 9 years, I've been researching and learning everything I can about healing cancer, allergies, autoimmune, and mystery illnesses in both my dogs and myself, and I can't wait to share with you everything I've learned on this journey. As the Alternative Dog Moms, we're bringing you all the latest dog health news that we're following and sharing the tips, tricks, and resources we learn along the way. Now, let's get started. Hello, Kimberly.
You did like extra. Hello, Erin.
Okay, hello. Welcome to the Alternative Dog Moms.
Hello.
We're very excited to have you here, and we're very excited for everybody to hear what you've been working on.
I'm excited to be here.
Yes, I am so excited because as we were talking about before we started, I took the Feed Real course, the dog food nutrition course, loved every second of it. I wrote something somewhere on social media. I wrote about it recently, and I said that I actually thought that I would skate through it. Like, you know, what could it possibly teach me? I've been feeding raw for 10 years. I know it all, of course. You know, I thought I would, pick up some things on nutrients here and there. But no, it was really a fantastic course. And when it was over, we talked about this last week, I had this melancholy when it was over because it was just like, that was such a big part of my life for a couple of weeks. And I was looking forward to what I was going to learn next. I didn't walk away needing to make changes to how I feed my dogs. I'm very confident that I'm doing things right. But it's confidence that came after 10 years of doing this. But following the course and just the way you guys organized it by giving us an origin story of the life of dogs and man. And, there's so much in the beginning about, but if you feed kibble, here's what you can do. So it was completely not, kibble shaming or anything like that. And it was very, I love the fact that there was support at the bottom. So if you wanted to learn more, you can follow these links. It was everything. And I was just like, when's the next one? I mean, it was so much fun. So yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. I am a teacher and researcher at heart. So it was fun for me to do. I love the feedback that I got from you and several other people and going back through and tweaking things. And it's really hard when you get to know a subject to make sure that you're saying it where other people that don't know the subject will understand. So I had a high learning curve with that. I taught at the university level. So
I thought you did a really good job of making it where you didn't dumb it down. It was like a conversation. It was like basically taking someone's conversation and putting it into course format. And it was so much fun to just go back and there's so much I did not know. And I think, one of the many things that was exciting to me was learning about how different nutrients impact each other. Like, this nutrient is needed for this nutrient to do its job. Right. And vice versa. It was just really kind of exciting because I've been toying around with the animal diet formulator. And that's one of those where, you're off a little bit and you try to correct it and it throws everything else off. And it's just like, by the time when I first started playing around with it, I would have like 25 ingredients to balance a diet. And I just basically treated it like a video game. And my goal was to get it down to 10 ingredients. And I did it. But it was like, that was really eye-opening. And just seeing an explanation of why that was the case was, and why that was important. It was really helpful to me.
I think that's why we always emphasize variety too, because yes, it's really hard to get the animal formulator diet formula to match on a meal to meal basis. But when you take it across a few meals, then it's a lot easier to do. And then, so by having variety, it will balance it because you have different nutrients being added in.
So how did you connect with Ruby, and how did you guys get started on this gargantuan project?
Well, I'm a registered vet tech. I have been in practice 40 years now this month. And I started in clinics way back when I first got my degree and became bored very quickly. I'm very academic. I'm the kind of person that has to constantly be learning new things. So I knew I'd either go back to school or I realized that the university in my area was opening an animal research facility and we're hiring techs. So I applied for that and ended up staying there for 32 years.
And that wasn't just like any university.
That was the University of Notre Dame.
Wow.
And I stayed there, like I said, for 32 years. I ended up being the associate director of their animal facilities. And so I was involved with a lot of research. Quite a bit of it was nutrition research with different nutrients and how it affected different studies. My job abruptly ended in 2017 with restructuring of management. So I was kind of had a lull. I took a year and a half off and did nothing and got into the human medical field. Talk about bad timing. I worked in urgent care all through COVID and I was so burnt out and bored. Oh my God, bored. So it was in 2021, I've got to do something. And I started looking on LinkedIn and I put in remote and dog, and this real dog box job came up and I'm like, is this real? So I looked into it and sent Ruby my resume, and she told me that she saw my resume and said, is this real? And because I've written books and articles and all this. And so we connected and started out just working on the feedreal.com site and talked about doing a course for in-house training. And the more we dove into it, it's like, no, we need to share this with everyone. We need to share this with dog parents that are struggling to meet the requirements, but really want to do a good job with it. So it took on a life of its own. And then we decided we wanted to gear it toward the veterinary professional also. And so we really tried to ride the fence for a while and do it so it would do both. But we realized that was impossible because the veterinary one needed to be a lot more advanced. The dog parent one needed to cut out some of that extra science. So there's a very big balancing act there. So we split it. So now we have 2 courses. And I'm trying to maintain both and get reviews on both and tweak both. It's a never-ending project.
And so I heard you telling Dr. Connor Brady that you are close to getting it approved, the veterinary professional course approved for like continuing education credits. Is that right?
Correct. So you have to go through and get what's called RACE accreditation, and that's the Registry of Approved Continuing Education Credits, which is what RACE stands for. And that takes, because I'm not a board certified nutritionist, I have to have recommendations from 2, either board certified nutritionists or 2 with advanced degrees in animal nutrition. And we have 2 people reviewing it right now. So it's a matter of waiting for their letters of recommendation.
And so that'll be really attractive to more people in the veterinary industry to take this course and learn this information, because it'll count towards, every state, I would imagine, has different requirements for continuing education.
Correct.
So it wouldn't just be something they would do for fun. It's something they would actually get like credit for.
Exactly. So every state has their own requirements. Right now I'm registered in Indiana. And so I have to have 20 CEs per every 2-year round. So that would be half of my CEs for that 2-year. It's going to be a 10 CE credit program. And yes, so that is very attractive to them. And also that it mirrors the dog parent course so that they know what the dog parent is also learning. Okay. And gives them a way to share the journey by both of them learning the same thing.
And so I also have to ask, are you somebody who has dogs and who was already feeding their dogs raw?
Ironically, I do not have a dog. For a year and a half, Ruby's telling me I have to get a dog. I have had dogs, obviously.
I have a foster puppy here.
Yeah, there you go. I've had dogs throughout my life, but my last dog was put down in 2018. And then I started the job in the human medical field, and I worked 12-hour days. So I wasn't prepared to get one at that point, and life has gotten in the way. I am in the process of, I live with a dog now. It's not my dog right now, but she is being converted back to, she's been fed raw before, but she's been converted back to that. And she's very happy having me live there with my real dog box coming. And she sees me open that closet and she gets all excited. And so we're working with her. But honestly, before I started working with Ruby, I did not know anything about raw feeding. So this has been a huge learning curve for me. Total paradigm shift. I was trained that kibble is what you do. I went through a Hills certification course when I was probably about 10 years into my being a technician. When I was at the University of Notre Dame, I actually was the pre-vet advisor. So any students wanting to go on to vet school, I helped them get into vet school. And one of the prerequisites for a lot of schools is a nutrition course. And so I had to mentor them through one of the courses that they had at some of the colleges, like Purdue University has one that they could take online, and I just had to proctor it for them. Oklahoma State, there's several. And so I would, proctor these courses, and now I look back and think, oh, what a disservice I did to them. But most of that was feedlot, cattle, horse, goats, that kind of stuff. So no, I didn't know anything about it. It was a brand new thing, but like I said, I love to learn. And I actually, a funny story, the weekend before I was supposed to start working for Ruby, I fell and broke my left hand in 3 places. And so I called her and I'm like, I have to go get casted on Monday when I was supposed to start with her. And I've had this terrible accident. And so I actually delayed starting by a month. And during that month, I read Connor Brady's book. I did a couple of courses online, and kind of serendipitous because I really felt much more prepared for the job when I started.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So when they're learning about nutrition in school, do they actually explore the NRC guide, or is it even more higher level than that?
It's more, most of the vet school programs that I looked into when doing all these articles are still large animal feedlot, meaning, they're feeding herds of animals. Now, there are some colleges of veterinary medicine that do have small animal nutrition, and they have small animal nutrition options, not necessarily requirements. So it really depends on the student to get more of what they want. However, most of the vet schools are sponsored by one of the big kibble companies like Hills or Purina. And those vet students get free dog food, cat food for their pets throughout their time in vet school. And sometimes they'll give them free books. It's very sponsored by the nutrition companies. Yeah. And the vet schools, a vet program is extremely expensive to run. So these schools are going to take any money they can get to help run them. These students are learning on at least 9 species. So it's an extremely expensive program. And like I said, they'll take what money they can get. If it's from a nutrition company, they'll take it.
Yeah. And vet school is so expensive.
Which is, yeah,
and when I speak to people, in fact, recently I was speaking to someone who is in vet school, and, she had a very open-minded attitude when it came to raw feeding and alternative, medicines and things like that. So we were talking privately about, just the things that I do and how she plans to interact with patients. And, you know, she does have a job and, you know, what she does. And she's sort of like, my job is to educate, not to, you know, bully people or threaten people or scare people into doing what I think that they should do. It's just to give them all the facts so they can make a better informed decision. And I was actually really pleased by that because, you know, I have spoken to people who are so very adamant that everything I'm doing is wrong. You know, I'm killing my dogs, you know, and, you know, I've been doing this for years, but any minute now, my dogs are all, you know, and, you know, and it's so disconcerting because it's not that I feel that I know everything, but just as they feel that they have science on their side, I feel like I have science on my side too. And it's kind of, I'm waiting for that moment when the entire community makes a shift. And it's not so much that everyone will be feeding raw, but that it becomes a more accepted choice. I mean, I see it happening, but, you know, it's still just like, you know.
That's why I was very pleased at the conference this weekend with veterinarians.
I was curious about that. Because when we talked to Ruby last week, she was telling us that you guys were going to this Fetch DVM conventional medicine conference in San Diego. And so yeah, tell us about that.
So yes, so it's our second time being at a vet conference. The first one was the Holistic Veterinarian Conference. So we were really well received. So this one we didn't know. And I have to say, I'm extremely pleased with the way it went. We had a very positive outcome. Yes, we had some that were negative and couldn't really say why, other than the biggest scare of them is bacteria. And as Kimberly knows, we did an article about that in the course and discussed that. But overall, especially when they realized that we were saying that we wanted to educate the dog parent so that they were doing it properly, their whole attitude changed. It wasn't me telling the vets that you're doing it wrong. It's me saying, we're trying to help your clients feed their dogs correctly so that you're not seeing sick animals from it. Yeah. And it was really a shift in the conversation once we took it that way and had some really good conversations with the veterinarians. And they said, yes, that's the problem is people come in and say they want to do raw, but they're throwing chicken in a bowl and saying they're feeding raw. Yeah. So they were really pleased to know that there was a course out there. And then we would get into the fact that there's the professional course coming, and they were pleased about that. So I was very pleased with the outcome and the conversations.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
My dog, Rodrigo, he's almost 13 and he has arthritis. And so he's going through laser therapy currently. And he had an appointment today and I'm sitting in the lobby while my friend Ashley does his laser therapy. So she takes him back. And I'm talking to these ladies in the lobby and it was so heartbreaking. And it's one of those, sometimes I become so discouraged that I was basically, if it weren't for this podcast, I mean, I would never quit, but it was because of this podcast, like, well, I can't, cancel on Erin because we're interviewing the person who made the course that I took and loved. And then I got happy again. But I was just like, oh, I just don't want to do this anymore. And on my way home, I noticed that, or when I got home, I noticed I got an email of someone offering to buy my blog. And for like a split second, I thought about selling it because I'm like, what's the point? It's like, what is it? When you're like pushing a stone uphill, both sides. I mean, it was like, we're never going to move. And I say all that because one person had a dog that had arthritis so bad in a leg that their leg had to be amputated. And I'm like, I've never heard of anything like that before. Wow. And I asked how old the dog was because the dog looked very old and the dog was 9. And
what kind of dog was it?
It was a German Shepherd mix. And then the other woman, she had a beautiful pit bull. In fact, both dogs are beautiful, but a beautiful pit bull. It actually wasn't a pit bull. I think it was like the American Staffordshire. It was one of those long names, but big, bulky, blue, gorgeous dog. And the dog had tumors that just started growing spontaneously all around the groin area. And I asked, is like, can it be removed? Cause I was like, is it near arteries or something? And she's just like, I've already done that. She's like, I spent $2,600 6 months ago having all of them removed. They were all gone. And now they're all back and worse than before. And so she was like, and I'm just sitting here like, I don't like to talk to strangers about what I do, especially in a traditional vet's office. Right. But I was just sort of like, have you thought about doing like any type of herbs or finding anything that can just slow the growth of them or even, make them die down? And she was like, yeah, that's why I'm here, to find out what more I can do. And in my head, I'm thinking, you're not going to get that information here.
Right.
But I shared my story because the other woman asked me, about something. And I shared my story with Scout, who he was diagnosed with lymphoma in 2021. And he lived until actually August of 2022. So he lived for for a year and a half after his diagnosis. And, and I just explained a few things that I did. And I mentioned, the herbs and, working with a holistic vet and using Chinese herbs and the raw diet. And I was like, I already fed raw. So I just, had to do this. And one of them was like, but raw is so very, very expensive. And I was just like, no, it's not. Depending upon where you live, but where we live, it's actually it's not expensive. And the other thing was, she asked me, well, do you just feed them chicken? And that's when I was just like, okay, no, I'm not going to do this, because I had to go. And I'm stuttering because I'm just so stunned, because I'm thinking in her head, she's thinking that we just throw chicken into a bowl and feed our dogs. And sadly, there are a ton of people out there that do just that, thinking this is an appropriate way to feed raw. And then this is what the veterinarian community is seeing. And exactly. This is, it's not the only thing, but it would be huge. I am a raw feeder and I'm a proponent of fresh food, but I have pushback against that. So it's just sort of like, I just left with my dog.
Well, and that's exactly what the vets were saying when we talked to them. Yes, they do want to do it, and kind of rolled their eyes. And that's why, like I said, they were so receptive to the fact that there's a course. And I said, there's other courses online, but this one is backed by science. It's backed by textbooks. I don't have blog material in it. It's not my opinion, it's science. And it's practical.
Yeah.
So we took all of this and put it together and gave practical tips on. We didn't just say, here's all the information and that's it. We gave you all the information and then how to apply that information.
Yeah. I had so much fun just going through it and doing it. And I was actually afraid of the final exam, convinced that I would fail somehow, but I passed first time. But it was a lot of fun of just learning. I am a person that believes in balancing over time through variety, but I also respect and understand that it is important that, I at least attempt to feed my dogs a nutritionally complete diet. And I do that, and I've had them tested and they come back with flying colors. They're doing great. And what I've found is that each of my dogs is a little bit different when it comes to what they need. And I thought, and you guys do mention Parsley Pet in the test. And when I first, because, Parsley Pet is $250 per dog. So with a person who has 4 dogs, that's a lot of money. And so it's tempting to test one dog because they're eating the same diet. But I definitely learned, just over the years that, one of my dogs who has EPI, he absorbs nutrients differently than my other dogs. So I definitely have to test him. And it's just easier to test everyone. And, just to make sure. And I was wondering if you can speak to just about balance and our dogs absorbing nutrients and how important that is.
Well, of course, every being is different. And with dogs, they're the most diverse species in the world, with all the varieties that we've created. We have everything from a 2-pound Chihuahua to these massive dogs like I'm living with this week, 140-pound Anatolian shepherds. And so, of course, they're going to be different with the nutrients that they need. I think the ratios need to be different. And I really think that you have to think about the genetics. These dogs they're very similar, but they're still going to have different genetic anomalies. And even if you have litter mates, they're going to be different in the way they absorb. But saying that, specific breeds will have tendencies to have like EPI, like you were saying, or other nutritional diseases. So trying to do a one size fits all for all your dogs is impossible. And that's why it's so hard with kibble, because nobody has different kibbles if they have multi-dog households, they feed them all the same thing. I shouldn't say nobody. Some people do feed them differently, but that's hard. And it's hard even with the raw, but you're going to see the dogs respond differently. Yeah. And if you feed them according to their needs, you're going to also see that they're going to choose according to their needs, that a dog will leave portions of their food that they don't feel like they need that day. Yeah. And that's evident with, I think, vegetables. Some dogs will eat them, some dogs won't. Some dogs will eat them sometimes, and then other days they won't. So you have to think that they know what they need, and they're taking it in when they need it. So giving variety is so essential, and you can figure out what they do like, what they do need. But testing and working with the veterinarian, to me, is very, very essential. And that's one of the things, and Kimberly can testify to this, is that we stress in the course that you need to follow up. You need to check the dog's markers so that you are doing it properly, and visit the veterinarian frequently.
Yeah. And there's a whole section that goes into, because these things are mentioned throughout the course, but there's a whole section that explains why each one is important. And I think that's so crucial because it is an investment. Some people, because I've gotten emails where someone's like, well, where should I spend my money? And out of respect for their budget, I just try to get an idea of what they're seeing with their dog. Right. Because sometimes you might want to go with an animal biome test because your dog has allergies. But if your concern is that you're not meeting your dog's nutritional needs, then, I'm going to push you towards a parsley pet test. Right. If your dog has allergies, then, I might recommend one of the allergy tests that are available.
Scan or one of those.
Yeah. But you mentioned letting a dog, and I just wanted to show my bowls. In 2020, another one of my dogs, I've had 2 cancer dogs in the house, but our first cancer diagnosis was my Sydney, and she would not eat. And I was terrified because I knew she had to keep her strength up. And I called a friend who owns a raw food company down in Southern California, and she recommended that I feed her from a plate so that I can spread the food out and let her choose what she needed. And watching her, it was like a game changer. When I did that, it was like, finally, yes, this is what I need. And she went from not eating her food to eating everything again. And so I started feeding from pasta bowls and just flat surfaces ever since. Right. And recently, my husband and I were brainstorming, and I ordered these off of Amazon. And for people who can't see, if you follow me, you know what I'm talking about. But they're divided trays that you use for camping, and it has different sections. That way you can add different foods, and it's kind of fun. Well, not even kind of, it's very fun to watch dogs look at a dish like this and figure out what they're going to eat in order. And they always surprise me because there are certain things that this is her favorite, but she goes for this instead. And it's never the same. Maybe a couple of days it'll be the same, but then one day they'll throw me off. And because I always expect for them to go for the bone first. And then one day that's the last thing they'll have. And they'll go for like the egg first or the raw goat's milk first. And it's kind of cool just to watch them figure out what they need. And it's really cool when they leave stuff behind, because it's just sort of like, I'm good. And they walk away.
I think that's really interesting. And I've seen it while I'm here with Ruby's dog, and I've seen it with the dog that I'm living with. She will, she'll leave some of the bone So I'm assuming we gave her a little too much that day. She doesn't like the vegetables yet. So we're figuring that out. Figure out how to get those in her just a little bit here
Green
and there.
beans are a favorite in my house.
Okay,
I don't know what it is. I have a friend, we both say the same thing. I don't know what it is with the green beans. And it doesn't have to be like a certain type. It can be canned, it can be frozen, but thawed. It can be fresh, like, because I grow green beans in my garden every summer. They love green beans. But other vegetables, sometimes they're like, they'll try it. They'll eat broccoli, but I can't put big things of broccoli in there. It has to be cut up a little bit. But yeah, it's interesting to watch them because they'll eat all around. And my dogs have eaten vegetables, but I feel like for them, since it's because I do my own meal prep, and so I mix vegetables into the meat, and they eat that with no problem. But if I add extra on the side, they don't always eat it. Yeah, they're not always interested. They do like fur, though.
So one of the things that I believe you guys cover in the course that I'm just always super interested in hearing more about is the whole deal with synthetic vitamins.
Yes. Yes.
So I had always heard that synthetic vitamins and minerals they go into the body and basically come out the other end, either in the urine or the feces, pretty much untouched, because the body doesn't really know what to do with them. They're made, from what I have studied and read, is they're similar in their structure, but they're a mirror image of each other. So they don't quite fit into the receptors of the body the same way. And the one article I read basically said that they'll get into those receptors and clog them because they're not fitting quite right. So they're not really being utilized, but they fit enough to clog it so that when natural ones come in, they're being bypassed because there's nowhere for them to connect. And so the body just doesn't know what to do with them as much. So they end up being excreted or in the urine or in the feces, but at the same time, they can block receptors for then the natural vitamins and minerals. And so that's why I wrote that article about the synthetics, because people, they see that diet formulator and they want to get those numbers perfect. And so they'll put in these artificial vitamins and minerals thinking that is going to do it. But it's not going to, they're not natural. So the body's not going to be able to process them. The bioavailability, what the body can utilize, is not the same. And so that's where we really, really push the whole food supplements. So, if you need something for the heart, rather than, going for a multivitamin, multi-mineral type thing, you give pork heart, you give something that has the same nutrient profile as the area that is being targeted that needs to be treated, is what we recommend. If you need omega-3s, you give, green lip mussels or something that has omega-3 in it naturally, rather than an artificial supplement.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, one thing that someone told me years ago, I'm anemic, and I would be frustrated because I would take iron supplements and they just didn't seem to work. And someone explained to me that when you isolate a vitamin from the food, it doesn't work as well because it works in participation with these other things that are also in the food. And so I started taking, it's actually from grass-fed cow, a supplement from Ancestral Canine, whose owner is under fire right now. I've been watching that on social media.
Yes.
But his supplements are fantastic. And so I started taking the spleen. So I actually spoke to him on the phone and he made some recommendations. And instead of doing the liver, I did the spleen supplement because the iron content is so much higher. And boy, was that a game changer. I mean, I didn't realize how exhausted I was until I started taking that supplement.
Yeah, and I think that's that's the other aspect. I'm glad you brought that up with the vitamins and minerals. They have all of these cofactors and all of these these parts that work synergistically, even within that vitamin. So like vitamin C, we're just taking ascorbic acid out. We're not, and that's the tablet that you get, but you're not getting all the cofactors that went along with it. And that is extremely important too, is by isolating just that one part, you're not getting that synergistic effect of all the other factors.
So when looking at diets, I know we actually spoke to someone else about this in an earlier episode, but do you have a sense of what nutrients dogs are missing, on a consistent basis, something that we should look out for?
Right. From the ones, as I've been doing all of this research and writing and talking with Ruby and other dog owners, it seems like the omega-3 balance with omega-6 is huge. That's why we have so many itchy dogs. So we need to get those fatty acids balanced out. And with some of the dogs, the different amino acids, especially the older dogs, they recommend that you start reducing protein to take some pressure off of their kidneys. A lot of veterinarians will, whereas everything I've read is that they need more protein. It just has to be high quality. Yeah. And so I think dogs are missing high quality proteins, but I also think they're missing just the normal gut flora that they would get from being outside in the dirt. And our foods are so depleted in these nutrients from the soil. So all your normal meats that you would get at the grocery store, just the nutrients just aren't there. So I think their gut microbiome is missing a lot of the bacteria and other organisms that they need. So there's a lot missing, especially in the kibble fed dogs. They're just, they're not getting a good nutrient profile. And, you said that you're taking the spleen from a grass fed cattle, and that makes such a difference. It's if they're out in pasture, getting good nutrients off the soil, in soil that's been rotated with the crops, and, the farmers are regenerating the soil and trying to do much more sustainable practices. And that's where we need to go with it, is to get the animals those type of nutrients, the natural nutrients coming out of the soils and animals that are grazing on these soils.
Yeah.
So when you started learning about all of this, was there anything that just completely blew your mind that you were just so, not expecting to find out about feeding dogs?
There were a couple of really wow moments for me. So over the years, I had some weird things happen with dogs. And well, first of all, just the whole raw thing, wait a minute, I was taught all along that kibble was the right thing. And I guess it was almost like a brick to the head to myself. I'm like, why didn't I realize this? Like, what made me think that was okay? And so I was kind of frustrated with myself, not questioning it, but we know what we know when we know it. So that was a big wow. But I had a dog back in the early 80s, that had this horrible intestinal issue. And she would eat everything in sight. She was basically wasting away. She wasn't absorbing any nutrients. The veterinarian I worked with at the time, we opened her up, did an exploratory surgery on her. She didn't have anything in her intestines that was blocking them. Things looked pretty normal. We did a biopsy and sent it down to Purdue. They couldn't figure anything out. And as I'm reading through the article on small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, SIBO, I am like, this is what my dog had. It's every classic symptom, and it wasn't characterized until late 80s, early 90s as being an issue.
Can you tell us more about what that is?
So it's the small intestine bacterial overgrowth. So that's where a lot of the nutrients are being processed and digested. And so if there's an overgrowth of bacteria, that's not happening. It's unable to do its job. So those nutrients were passing into the large intestine undigested, basically, partially digested, which they couldn't be absorbed then. And so then she was just defecating them out. And in big cow piles of unprocessed food, So her small intestine was not able to do what it was supposed to do because of this bad bacteria overgrowth. And she basically was starving to death. And I had to put her down because we couldn't figure out what was going on. Because like I said, it hadn't been characterized yet. And so that was huge. I was like, all right, now I know what happened to her, because she was 4 years old. She was, it was devastating.
Yeah.
And so that was a really big aha moment. It was like a positive aha moment. But another one was, so I actually started up and ran a spay-neuter assistance program in South Bend for low-income families, the Notre Dame students that were interested in veterinary medicine and animal welfare and stuff. We all worked together, and we had a great organization. We raised money, we got grants, we did spay-neuter for all these low-income families. And then I learned how bad that is for their joints and everything while I'm doing this course and prepping for it, and how, especially I knew early spay-neuters were bad. I mean, that just made common sense. But, we were telling everybody, I was taught that you tell them, put those females, you want them before first heat, because otherwise they're going to get mammary tumors, and you want the males, before they're fully developed, because you don't want them to develop bad habits. And then, I'm reading more and more about the fact that their joints aren't getting the hormones that they need. And that's why we're having the cruciate problems in their knees and, all these other growth problems in their bones. And so, yeah, I've had a lot of aha moments.
Kimberly and I both volunteer in the rescue kind of world. So yeah, the spay neuter thing is always something that I'm trying to wrap my head around, because when you see the shelter and the rescue, world.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those, it's a double-edged sword, because we do have irresponsible breeders in the area who will adopt a dog to create some designer breed that they just made up. And it's horrible. I mean, we have signs, not so much where I live, but definitely if you drive north, you see it everywhere, where it's like this dog with 2, 3, 4 breeds. And I have one underneath the table. He's a Goberian. He's a Siberian Husky, Golden Retriever mix. And he was my stepson's dog until he was just like, this is too much. And so he became our dog. But, he was advertised as a Goberian. And I on one hand, I get it. I get kind of what people are trying to do. I mean, on one hand, they're trying to make money. And two, right. I figure with the Goberians, they thought that they would meet that need from the Game of Thrones fans that wanted a dire wolf and were filling the shelters up with Huskies. Yes. So they'll mix it with a golden, everyone's favorite dog, and tone down the Husky. And whenever anyone asks me what he's like, I just say he's a really affectionate Husky. I mean, he has all the characteristics of a Husky, and he has the characteristics of a golden. It was not toned down. It's just more tolerable because he gets all affectionate and loving. And I'm like, okay, I forgive you for running off for 20 minutes and not listening to me.
Well, and I get, you're right. It's such a double-edged sword. And we have irresponsible pet owners too. If you tell them, oh, don't spay and neuter them, then they're going to let them run around and all have puppies. And so it is a big double-edged sword, but at least knowing what I know with people that I know are responsible owners, and they ask me, then I can say, let's hold off and wait a couple of years and let those sex hormones really get in there and do what they need to do and work with the nutrients and get a good base going with the body, and then let's neuter or spay them.
And I think it would be helpful, just in general, because this divide between traditional and holistic, between raw feeders and veterinarians, it doesn't need to be there, because I think ultimately we're all here for the same reason, because we care about animals. And, there are always going to be those outliers of people who just are not responsible. But, there are also people who want to do the right thing. And I wish that you hear about other countries where it's like, yeah, we don't spay and neuter and our dogs run around and no one gets, and it's just like, there's this utopia of which you speak because, if you start telling people here what to do, everyone gets all upset and, I'm American and you don't tell me what to do. But on the flip side, there are so many people who want to know how, because, like if you adopt a dog and it's already spayed and neutered, here are the things that you can do to support that dog and support, because now these are the problems you're going to face. So let's start working on that joint health early in life and talking about, honestly, these are the health issues that we're going to come across, but here are some things that you can do to keep that at bay. And that's the conversation that I just don't see happening. And I think it could help so many people.
I was surprised by several of the veterinarians or veterinary technicians that said to me, when I asked about nutrition, they said, well, we don't really have that conversation. Mm-hmm. And I said, you mean when they come in, you don't ask them automatically what they feed? Not always. And that, to me, should be one of the core things that they discuss every single time those animals come in. They should be talking to them about what they're feeding and how they're reacting to that food. And if those conversations start, and then they can, that's what I was saying with the raw feeding. If you have these conversations and you talk to them about it, not just, they're afraid to talk to the veterinarians about it because the veterinarians aren't going to be receptive. So the conversation needs to be there. And if they get the dialogue going, then it's going to be beneficial both to the pet, the owners, and the veterinarians. And that's where the dog parent course comes in. It provides that conversation starter. To me, if I'm a veterinary professional and a pet owner comes in and says, I took this course and I understand how it works, and I really want to get some blood tests done and make sure that I'm doing it right, there should be no veterinarian that says, I don't believe in that. That's... They have common ground at that point. Yeah. And that's what I really wanted to emphasize at the conference, is that we understand that it's really hard if pet parents, if dog parents, cat parents aren't doing this correctly. But this is a way for them to do it correctly.
Yeah. And so tell us about the FeedReal database, because I want to join this and get access to everything that you're working on.
So we have either a monthly or annual subscription that gets you to all of the FeedReal articles. And most of the content of the course is in that. It's just not set up the same way. It's not going to be organized the same way. Yeah. And you're not going to have the quizzes. And
I appreciated that, because it's like, if I want to remember something from the course, I can just go to all of the articles and find exactly what I want to and read it all over. I don't have to go digging through the course to find it. And that's so cool.
Yeah. So and then that membership also gets you free shipping on your product, and gets you a consultation with nutritionists if you're part of the membership. So there's a lot of benefits to it. There's a lot of articles. I'm going through them actively now. Every 3 months, each article will ping and say it's time to fact check, make sure there's no new articles. Haven't turned that on yet because I'm still trying to go through all of the ones that were written before I started. So it's like, Ruby says, you're going to have that done by the end of the year? And I'm like, this year? 2023? Yeah, maybe.
Are you just on PubMed like all day, every day? Is that
pretty much?
Yeah,
I do a lot. And that was one of the benefits with working at the University of Notre Dame. I actually retired from there because of the timing. So I have access to all their databases. So
that's amazing.
PubMed is nice, but I have 10 times that by going into the university database. So all those that you get online and you want to read and it says click here to buy, I can get them through the Notre Dame database. And if they don't have it, then you get it through interlibrary loan, and it takes a day or two. So
I'm going to need your email address.
That's what Ruby will type up. I need information, and then I just jump on, and it's great. And it's funny. I must have had like a sixth sense when I said that was one of the conditions of my contract, because I must have known somewhere down the line I'd need that information. Yeah. And I use it all the time, every day.
That's amazing. Can you speak to like, in the NRC and AAFCO? Because, one thing that we see a lot in our community, it's a common bickering moment of, well, I use the NRC to create meals, and other people are like, but the NRC is based on kibble. So is it really accurate? And we go back and forth on this all the time. And I really, really enjoyed that portion of the course because I just sat there going, I know exactly. I didn't know exactly, but I know how to say it, but now I do.
Yes. Yeah. So the bottom line is, again, like you said, it's based on kibble. So everything was based on kibble studies and very, very small numbers of dogs. And they didn't base it on the bioavailability of the nutrients. So the nutrients in kibble are not nearly as bioavailable as the nutrients in whole food. So trying to meet those, you can actually overdo. If you try to give as much zinc as it says on the AAFCO guidelines, because that zinc in the kibble is being linked to other nutrients that are keeping it from being utilized properly. The phytates that are in like legumes and other types of vegetables, those linked to zinc, you're not going to get the full bioavailability. So if you're giving that many oysters to get that much zinc, your dog's going to have way too much zinc and you're going to have a toxicity. So you cannot meet those guidelines with whole food because it's the nutrients are so bioavailable and you're going to overdo it. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Okay. So yeah, reading that article and, showing how AAFCO comes about that. And it was about feedlot medicine, and it really still is. It's about how to feed a herd of cattle, or in this case, a herd of dogs. And that's not what we're doing. We're individualizing, and kibble doesn't. Kibble does not individualize the meals. And there's, tons of different kibble, but if you look at them, they're all pretty much the same. And it's just not enough variety in there to meet all the needs for the animals. They will survive, but as we say, will they thrive? Mm-hmm. And the longevity of the dogs that was another aha moment. I read somewhere about golden retrievers used to live to age of 15 or more, and now their average lifespan is 9 to 10.
Yeah, that's what I was reading an article that was a review of The Forever Dog by Rodney Habib and Dr. Karen Becker. And the article was, kind of debunking the Forever Dog. And one of the things that it said is that there's no evidence that dogs used to live longer. And I don't know if you guys can hear, but Alexa's telling me to take Bella outside. I already did. But, I found that interesting because I don't know if there's a study that can do that, because we can't go back in time and start interviewing people, but everyone talks about my childhood dog lived this long, or, older people when I was younger, this is how long my dog lived. And, and we didn't, it's like we fed them scraps and we didn't worry about spaying and neuter. And, these dogs lived a different life. And there's a critique that the book is encouraging us to go back to this life that actually isn't as idealistic as the book paints it, and that there's no evidence that that's the case.
I know I've read review articles about past dogs, and I'd have to look them up to get accurate numbers, that have shown that there is some evidence. Is it as hard science as some of the other things? No, because they didn't keep track of it back then, because like you said, there was no need.
Isn't there, I feel like Kennel Club, people who have like registered breeds through the kennel, that they were keeping that kind of information.
Yeah, they might. And
I feel like I heard that too.
I'm writing myself notes to look into this, because, you guys are sending me down a rabbit hole. And
I'm excited to do it.
Yeah, I can get into my database. Exactly when I put my childhood pet down, I'm trying to think, I was in high school. So she was They got her when I was like 2, so she was 16, and she was a larger dog, you know, she was probably 17. Yeah. And she didn't have any health problems until, you know, she was basically at that point old and couldn't function very well when we decided to put her down. But yeah, I just think anecdotally, we might have to accept some of that evidence, but it seems pretty obvious.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those where I honestly don't remember my childhood dogs. I mean, I remember them, but my dad, he kept all the female dogs were named Lady, all the boy dogs were named Kojak. So I don't know how many we had, but he did that so that we could remember their names. And I feel my father's passed now, but I kind of, if he were alive, I just call him and go, so were we stupid? Is that what it was? Because I'm pretty sure I named my dolls. Or was I stupid? But so I don't know how long our dogs lived, but yeah, I do, recognize the stories. In fact, I was reading again the story of Maggie recently, and she I think died at 30, I think, and actually in the past few years,
right,
the Kelpie, and about what her life was like, and it probably will make a veterinarian's head explode, because she wasn't doing anything that is done here in America, where we have the high processed diets. But it's kind of inspiring to see the story, but it's one story, and how many other dogs are living that way and living that long. I wish to know someday.
Yeah, and it's the other part of the puzzle is all this preventative stuff that we're doing. Is it really preventing? It might be preventing specific things, but it's causing longevity issues, and so it's frustrating.
Yeah, I know. I struggle with that with vaccinations, because it's sort of like I'm going to be vaccinating one of my dogs. Two of my dogs are seniors, so I feel like I can make the argument that, they're seniors now, we're done. But one of my dogs is still young, and he's the one that goes and, I take him not to the dog park, but we go to friends' houses and he plays with their dogs. And so he's out and about and being exposed to other dogs, drinking out of shared water dishes. So I want him to be protected. And, it's one of those things where when I was talking to the vet student, she made a comment that, all these special things that we do for our dogs to help them, I guess, better survive a vaccination, that it's all just, snake oil. And it's just sort of like, well, it's not, but, but I can totally understand why you would think that, because her attitude was that people are making us afraid of vaccinations. And so is this, the review sort of have this attitude too. People are making us afraid, but then turning around and selling us stuff. Yeah. And from looking on the outside in, I can totally see why they would say that. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, because I feel the same way about kibble. People are selling kibble, but then they sell like gravies and meal toppers and stuff. And it's just sort of like, why not just improve the kibble? Why do we have to put all this special stuff to make our dogs want to eat something that they're not supposed to be eating?
Yeah. That was one of the things I wanted to bring up about the course too. I think people appreciate that we don't say it's all or none. You have to feed raw or we're not talking to you.
Yeah.
I talk a lot about kibble toppers and just adding enough to enhance the meal and get them some of those nutrients that are missing. But it's what's funny is it's most of the time that's going to lead to feeding them raw, because the dogs are going to start eating around the kibble and not eat the kibble, and they're just going to eat the toppers. A friend of mine, that happened. Her and I, when she was working with me at the other job, and I started in and I brought her a dog box, and, she started giving her dog stuff on top of his meal. And then she's realizing he's not eating any of the kibble anymore. And the one day she ran out of toppers and he's like, I'm not eating any of that. So she went to totally raw. So it's fun to encourage people to do that, because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, it's probably going to lead to you feeding mostly raw or lightly cooked. And that's the other thing we talk about, lightly cooked. You don't like raw, then that's what I love about the Real Dog Box treats, is you can use those as the organ meat and you don't have to handle the organs.
Yeah.
So, and some of the bones and stuff that we have in the fish. So it's not as hard and as expensive as the person you said, oh, it's too expensive. That person's probably putting Halloween costumes on their dog too. I mean, like it's where you choose to spend your money.
Yeah. Well, it's that, and it's where you shop, because I know that when I was brand new, so 10 years ago, it never occurred to me. First of all, I shopped at the big box, Petco, PetSmart, pet stores. Right. I didn't even know that there were local independent pet stores in my area. And I don't know if you can, she drinks water really loudly. But so I didn't even know that. So I went to these big box. They did have raw, but it was like only one brand of raw. And it was so insanely expensive that, and people were like, oh, well, you can find these other brands. And I would learn about a couple of other brands, and I could only order them online. And it was so exciting. Everything was so much. And then I thought, okay, well, what about if I do it myself? Where do you get meat? Well, you go to the butcher or you go to the grocery store. And so I priced meat. And again, it was so insanely expensive. Right. And then I couldn't get certain cuts of meats. And I didn't know about like shopping at Asian or ethnic stores or anything. Right. So I was going to the most expensive places to figure out how much I needed to spend on my dogs. And so I wonder if that's sort of like where her head is.
Yeah.
That, she's
I think
going
that's true.
Because it probably was a year into raw feeding that, because I was about to go back to kibble. Because I discovered that, we have Darwin's Pet in my state. And so they got me started, but our dog count increased and I couldn't afford Darwin's Pet anymore for 4 dogs. It was just ridiculous. And I was about to go back to kibble, and I reached out to this woman that I found online, someone that was doing a local raw feeding course. And I missed the course, but I found the woman's name and reached out to her, and I took her to coffee. And she was like, yeah, you need to join the raw food co-op. And I was just like, what is this place? And after I had coffee with her, I went home. During my search and learning about raw feeding, I met a really good friend of mine. She lives in Florida, Tina. I called her and I was just like, there are raw food co-ops. And she was just like, what? And so she found one in her area, and we were just like, it was a game changer.
Great.
But again, you just don't know you don't know to think about these things. You don't know. Gosh, I didn't know about things like the different organs that you can feed, none of that. And it's so intimidating to jump into social media to try and learn these things.
There's so much information.
Yeah.
If you go to our Feed Real page now, our tagline is make your dog's food on a budget. And that's what we are trying to help people do. And we have the directory on there so that you can look in your state to see. We want people to add to that directory. So if either of you know of any in your state, I added the stuff in South Bend, Indiana, which is where I was living. Now I got to figure it out in the Nashville area. Because yes, helping each other is the way we can all stay true to this and work through it.
Are you going to add like pet stores or anything to that?
Well, small ones that have, some of the things that you can source there, but mainly we want to add any place that you'll be able to find the products that you need to be able to source whatever you need. So one of our local pet stores, Jules Animal House, they have a thing every month called Wild Wednesdays. Tomorrow, it is on my calendar. 10 a.m. I will be walking into that pet store, and Jules, she wanted to make raw feeding affordable for people. And so one day a month, she marks down everything fresh food. So raw, awesome. Freeze dried, dehydrated, treats, food, everything, cat, dog, it's all 20% off. And I go in once a month and I stock up on what I need because my senior dog, he no longer is really into raw. So he gets some raw, but mostly cooked, and he loves a pup above. He loves the brand. And so I get food for him. I get food for my cat. And now that we have this foster, I get food for the foster because I refuse to feed her kibble. But I won't feed her raw. So she gets freeze dried as well. Okay. And it's just like, it's nice to be able to save some money.
because I see people buying, like they have a flatbed, cart filled with food because that's when they can do it. And it's really kind of cool that she offers that.
Yeah. Any of that you can email. I think on the directory, it has a spot, or it's supposed to, I don't know if we've gotten there yet, that you can actually look. Yeah, I don't think that's in there yet. I need to have them add that, where you can type in your information and then that we can add it. So I have to make sure that we can get that in there.
Because it is, it is cool to be able to just know where to go. It's just a matter of trying to find a way to get that information to people outside of our community too.
Exactly. And so the more people that add to it for us, the better. And then if you're traveling and you need to figure it out, or, somebody just moved into a place. And then the other thing is we're trying to get into more retail outlets too with the Real Dog Box stuff. And that will be helpful too.
I know. I have a whole stack of them behind me.
Funny, I don't even have one here in this room. Ruby has them everywhere else in the house. I didn't grab anything here. That's one of the things we're still working on, is trying to upgrade that and get more and more information on that directory. So
I think the course, if, like, for instance, if the veterinarian staff at the clinic that I take my dogs to, if they, were familiar with the course and took the professional one, they can help so many more people. And it's, like me, and it opens the availability, because I think a lot of people don't want to take their dog to a traditional vet, but they don't really have a choice because that's what's available. Right. And it's, I don't agree with people saying, well, I'm not going to talk to my vet about what I feed my dogs, because I think that, if your dog comes down with a health issue, that there's just a conversation that you guys could have. Like, for instance, I had a dog, Sydney, I brought her up earlier when she had hemangiosarcoma. I didn't know about, when she's having an active bleed, you can't feed her sardines, you can't feed her, golden place, you can't give her CBD oil. And those are the type of conversations that I could only have with a veterinarian. And thankfully, I discovered a really amazing group that was sharing that type of information with me. But I feel like I just got lucky with that amazing group, because I didn't find one that was as on par with the amount of information when my dog was diagnosed with lymphoma.
Right. And those are the type of things that we're going to be developing. We are going to develop a second course once all these are done and everything in FeedReal is updated. An advanced course with those more specific things that, if your dog has hemangiosarcoma, if your dog has bladder stones, if your dog, how do you feed around that and what do you avoid? Because every condition, there's a way to work food into it. Is it going to cure it 100%? Probably not, but it can either prolong the good times for the dog, delay onset of other issues, work with the dog's body to help it along.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's out there. It's I have a list of 2 pages long of articles that I want to write. And like I said, I've got to get through all the other ones. And so, yeah.
It is. It's so, it's because the things that we know is my dog has arthritis. So, he does eat, foods with omega-3 fatty acids, because I want to not have another cancer diagnosis in the family. I've incorporated broccoli sprouts into their diet. There are just so many things that we could do, but we don't know. And, it's funny because people ask me, why don't you take the COSI course and start offering meal formulation services? And I'm like, if someone's dog has any type of health issue, which most dogs do, I won't be able to create a meal that is for that. I would be afraid of making it worse because I didn't know that a dog that has blank can't eat blank.
Well, and I think, it worries me when people just jump in and start formulating diets. I am a huge proponent of working with a veterinary team because there are so many things that we can be missing. We just really need to work together with the veterinary team. And that's the thing I really, really pushed with the veterinarians, is that we are not trying to take you out of the loop. we are trying to make it so that the conversation could be had and that everyone's comfortable talking about it.
And, and that is the thing, right? When you're somebody who wants to go the raw food, fresh food, alternative way, and if you don't have a veterinarian who is supportive of that, that's when you are turning to looking on the internet and,
Right.
This person does the meal formulations, and you're not talking, you're purposely not talking to your vet. And it sounds like the vets aren't even talking to most of the clients about it at times anyway. And yeah, people really do want to be on the same page as their vet, but when they're not, they're going to go figure something else out.
It's the same in human medicine. How many times you go to the doctor, they don't ask you about your nutrition most of the time. And, this is a fundamental part of our lives.
Yeah.
That should be the first question.
That makes a huge difference in our health.
Exactly. It's so fundamental. And, it just blows me away the more I learn about it. I didn't think about it as much as I do now, obviously. And it's just, like I said, at heart, I'm such a teacher. And so to try and spread this news is my passion now.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what you think of the course, because I had a lot of fun and, I learned so much because,
I want to do it.
Yeah, it was really just eye-opening. Even if, there are sections where I knew these things, but I didn't know why. And so now I have the why of it, or it gave me a new way of looking at something and considering something. So it was fun. It's definitely not something that could have been done in a live, like a 2-hour live. It was something that really, you needed to take time. And I'm glad that I didn't rush through it, because my first thought was, I'm going to just do this over the weekend. I'm glad I took time and really soaked it all in, because, it was such great information.
I'm so happy to hear that. You work on something for so long and you don't know how it's going to be received.
Yeah, so, I loved it.
It's awesome.
And so how long did it take to put it all together?
I've been here 18 months and I've done nothing else. So.
Wow.
Nice.
And we had another writer working on it with me for a while. But right now it's just down to me. So, and then I did all the final edits and constantly, like I said, more edits and tweaking it as people bring in questions and comments. And so, we had some uploading issues where things didn't get uploaded right that we didn't catch. People like Kimberly caught, a lot of fun things. And, oh my God, how did I miss it? You start looking at the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
I'm still working on my book, and it's just one of those things where one of the last times I looked at it, I realized I had copied and pasted a section. It was in 2 separate spots. And I think I was moving it, but forgot to take it out of another spot. And it was just
found that a couple places too. And it's just hard.
Yeah.
you have to step away from it. So, and that's where I'm at. There's still several comments that I need to go back through, but I'm going to take a break from that and start working on updating the feed reel articles. But it's just, constant output of information.
Yeah.
Well, you're killing it, Kay, and I hope you're very proud of all of this.
I am. It's, my retirement job. So
it's a good one to have. I appreciate it.
I love learning, and I love the constant and teaching. It's just, that's who I am.
Thank you so much for your time.
You are so welcome.
We'll make sure we have links in the show notes for everybody to get the course.
Yes, that would be great. We look forward to more comments and if there's anything that you can think of that we left out, Kimberly, shoot me an email.
I'm happy to.
I love getting information from people. Your comments, Ruby, forwarded them every time. And then, okay, dive into it. Make the changes. So it was great.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on.